Hello everyone. I hope you can hear me and see me through this YouTube thing. Hope everything is okay and everybody's fine. I have my screen set up in a way that you will probably see now. And let me double check that everything is in order. It is. Let's go back here. Perfect. So, how you doing? Hope everybody is fine. It's super hot in Berlin right now. It's like 35 degrees and humid, wet. So it's not the common weather that you would expect from a place like this, but it is what it is. So everybody is struggling and people are probably booking sessions because we have air conditioning, which is not too common in Berlin. So what I want to do here is I've set up this session to talk about dynamic equalization. So the way I've set the screen up is I wanted to have the live chat visible, but I also wanted to have on the far left of the screen my talkback microphone visible. The reason for this is that if you don't see the red thing blinking and you don't see the green meter going, it probably means I've been talking to myself for the last 30 minutes. And I don't want this masterclass to become what my conversation with my parents are on the phone. So this should be something where I talk, and if you have questions, you stop me, and we can continue to talk about things in general, okay? So it's not a video tutorial, it's not something that goes straight from beginning to the end, it's not something with me just blabbering. It will be mostly me blabbering, but if you want to stop me at any time to ask a question, this is exactly the time and moment to do it. It's like you were here in the room with me, minus actually being here. So the session I have loaded is a session from 2006-2007, and the reason for this is that we just used this session. We're lazy. We just used this session to shoot some masterclasses that are actually online. There is one on mixing decisions that came out yesterday, at the date of this live stream, and the 3 episodes are already out. 2 are missing because if you read about the masterclass, I have to wait a sort of like a week to redo the mix with different plugins. That's the point of the session, of the masterclass. But there's an introduction, there's a session overview, and there's already a mixing masterclass there. So this session I had loaded for the masterclass, and I said to myself, you know what, I'm gonna use this same thing with dynamic EQs. This is a rock tune from 2006-2007, something like that. And it was the first song that we recorded for the album that made my first rock band not famous. I wish I could say famous, but it's not actually famous. It's an album that came out in the first location of Fuse Room in Florence, in Toscana. And what happened was that, you know how it is with recording studios, especially for indie rock projects, Tuscany had a little bit of that scene around by, 2005, 2007. And some people were like, oh, they got a record deal through the demo and record that they made. So maybe we have to go and make a record there because maybe then we get, a record deal. That was how my studio got kickstarted into making not only piano and keyboards lessons and DAW software teaching, but more of a production thing. So this is mostly people that were with me in high school, teachers that were friends of mine. We were teaching music together. A guy was teaching guitar, I was teaching keyboards and piano, the other guy was teaching bass, and we put up this band. I haven't written the song, but I co-arranged everything and played synthesizers in here. So what can I say about the session itself? It was done in an open space area, living quarters of like what you would call a very small loft. So imagine a cube with very high ceilings, something like, those open space, like former industrial areas where they had built an apartment. And we had put this desk on the top floor and on this balcony, and we had built a soundproof box underneath. So the box was barely enough to hold the drummer. And I remember when tracking the drummer, and all the guys that I had done there, but not singers, but drummers who would sweat and play the drums hard, they had to get out sometimes to catch a breath, just because it was so small. And the problem with booths is that you have, in general, resonances. The smaller or bigger, any room has resonances, right? Even bigger ones. But the problem with smaller ones are that the resonances become really obnoxious oftentimes, and you can't place the guy you want to track in a position where the resonances are not going to be there. So we knew that, but we wanted to record the record anyway, and this was self-produced. So everything you hear here, all the tracks that you can see in this session, which is around 24, 26 tracks, come from a self-produced record. And what we did is we put one kick mic, and then we found out we didn't have enough bass and stuff. So we blended two, one membrane sort of sub bass kick that a guy had done. I don't know where it comes from, probably some kind of speaker, and the Beta 52. But I didn't have enough channels, so we blended the two together at the same time. So let's use this to make sure we can hear these tracks and everything is going straight how it has to be. So this is how the kick drum sounds. All right, I only have second verse into the second chorus, and let me know if there's any issue, but I think we tested everything. We're super professionals. How can anything go wrong, right, on the internet? Then snare 257, Shure SM57, as simple as that. Remember, money at the time, even now, but back then it was like we were young and wild. That's what I used to say. So snare. Pretty clear, right? There's a top and there's a bottom. I already checked the phase. I don't want to say that, but it seems that the phase of the bottom wasn't flipped in what we tracked. So that's okay. It happens. Just check it, check the phase, and if anything is wrong, just, flip it. And in that case, flipped bottom sounded better. So somebody made a mistake, but it's fixed. Then we have two tracks of parallel splash, and this comes from a template of mine that I've been using quite a lot. So I could play it cool and say I have my own template now and have my own fancy stuff in there. This is a parallel splash, and it's aimed at giving the raw untouched snare some lift. In case, which is usually the case, you can't hear what's going on, like the snare gets buried in the mix. Shouldn't happen, but you need some reinforcement sometimes. So this is how it sounds without anything. And the second one is a transient designer, which is just meant to lengthen the snare itself. Just a little bit less attack, a little bit more sustain, and off we go. And it sounds like this. It's a sort of like shaft, like bottom high frequencies of the snare that just come up. So these are straight parallel. The splash, for those of you who are geeking and OCD like me, is a combination of an L1, an SSL channel bi-waves, a CLA 76, an LX 480 on small room, panned mono. I always do that because it's a stereo track going into mono. And then 175 high pass filter, 12 dBs octave, right? So we get rid of the bottom and we go that chuff kind of thing. Sort of country rock stuff, which I'm in love with. Then we have hi-hat, Octava MK012. There's lots of snare, typical. Overheads. And you can hear these were still Octava MK012 over the head, like literally over the head, coming from the back of the stool over the drummer. I think I have pictures of this stuff somewhere, but it's in my archives. Don't want to, just go in the pile of stuff to go down memory lane. But you can hear the resonances of the booths. This is why it will be cool to tweak with dynamic EQ, because the booth itself is sounding very bad. But we found out that if we had kept the door open of this booth, thus completely defying the purpose of making something soundproof, the actual volume in which we were standing, the high ceiling place, was sounding amazing. So we put these two microphones, which I believe now they are Audio-Technica 2035, something like that. We borrowed them from the school. So we put them as high as we could, probably hanging around or somewhere, and we tried and captured these until it sounded right in the monitors. And I had NS10s to track this, all right? So I can't get any true and real than that. Hear how the room sounds. Sounds pretty good. Sounds pretty good. The neighbors didn't complain, so everything is fine. Then Rock Tom, Sennheiser MD421 2, the newer ones. Still borrowed. Now I own plenty of them. Back then, I was a kid. This is panned super right, and this is panned super left, floor tom. Not totally happy with the placement, I have to say. The good news is I've gotten better at recording stuff, but not too bad either. Can work with that. Better to have it darker than sharp. Then bass. Friend of mine, high school friend, Fender Precision bass. This sounds like this. Right? And he was in love with fuzz stuff, so we also tracked a pedal of his, maybe a big muff, but I'm not sure it was actually a big muff. Right? So let me keep check of how things are going here. Everything is happy, awesome. All right, so that green thing is gonna make me like more, relaxed and knowing that the thing is going. These two things will be blended together. Then guitars. On some of them you see these EQs. This is me just taking out some resonances because again, this is a Mesa head. I don't remember the model, with just a simple SM57 looking at maybe the halfway to the center of the cone of a single greenback 1x12. And the booth wasn't that good for holding that much pressure. These we tracked with the door closed. That's why the police didn't came. All right, then there's more guitars. More guitar. They're guitar players, right? So that's what they do. They just stack stuff. All right. Then, yes, still taking down some resonances. Then there's this solo. And then the best part, the synthesizers. This is me playing them. How cool is that? Then you have a second synth. Then you have a third synth. And then you have a fourth synth, which is, lo and behold, the signature sound. Now you have to hear it, because I'm old now and, I make you listen to stuff. Alright, this is my super favorite part of all, by all means. Then we have more synths. Doing sort of crescendo, has to be in stereo. Two things, lots of lows. Then I think all of this was a Moog Little Fatty, but this is a Little Fatty. But this I think is a North stage. Yes. Then we have vocals. I don't remember the microphone we used.
Volo oltre un margine per cercare dove sei.
How cool is that? I make you listen to Italian lyrics, right? Next, you know, I'll be teaching you how to cook. Then vocoder. So this is me playing over vocals with the Morphoder, I think, by NI, and just triggering harmonies. The whole record was done like that. There's no actual backing vocals. There's no people in the band that just sing over. It's just, we wanted to keep this electronic vibe. So the two together sound like this.
Nella realtà.
All right. So I was trying to get harmonies like right on the fly. It was an experience, but you know, if you get good at that, it can be a good gig. So there's 3 effects, 4 actually, that I want to keep on the vocals. And you might say, oh, but then we have effects on the vocals, so now everything is spoiled because it's gonna sound so cool. Well, I can't help it. I make stuff sound so cool. But seriously, I usually put effects, couple of them on the vocals right away. And I spend much less time with tweaking the lows, the highs. I want to hear how the vocal is, not completely dry, especially this that was tracked into a booth. So little bit of air. And lo and behold, this is what I call Wendy's, because this track is, why wouldn't you call Wendy's, right? I said the same on the video. It's the most beautiful name you can give the track. So Wendy here is Wendy Carlos EMT 140 that they sampled in Altiverb, and you might say, oh, I just put a 140. Well, this sampling always sounded pretty cool to me for monoplates. And stereo plate, oh no, once again, yes, you can't live without this guy. It's the EMT 140 by UAD. I have to make different jokes because these are sort of the same that I use in the video, so I'll get better. Now there's 2 delays. One is used in the choruses and they're getting thrown. This is a very technical term. It means that they're getting automated and thrown at the singer when he throws the vocals, like when there's longer notes. Generally, it's like, this is what the chorus sounds like, and you'll hear it kicking in. Hold on.
Non cadrò.
You heard it's like a reverse slap, I would say, but a bit sounds to me a bit more modern. The crystallizer is giving this reverse and it's getting fed into the Echo Boy. The verse has a version of the crystallizer, different one, milder. You can't probably even tell it's there.
Sei nel vuoto, non sento più l'inquietude.
Sounds like a room, but it's not a room, it's crystallizer. So it's way cooler, right? No, it does sound like it's adding a little bit of depth. So, this is all. We don't have anything else. There's no banjo, there's no cowbell, unfortunately, but there's a thing we have to talk about before we go into there. Everything you're hearing is going through my mix bus, and this is not the my mix bus, it's a my mix bus. This is one of probably like the most common I use when I have to mix in the box, which I 99% never do, because when you lose a lot of money on outboard and you have sleepless nights, the last thing you want to do is not use the outboard. Might sound stupid, but you know, sometimes it happens, you get dragged into digital. When I do mix entirely in the box, when the project has to be fast, when budgets don't allow outboard or whatever, this is something I like to elaborate on. Shadow Hills Industries mastering compressor, much more reliable than the original one, especially for the power supply, which we don't have to take into account for this. Going into FG Red, so this would be a Focusrite Red 3 emulation. Then we go into 3 dBs more sides. Then we go into the hardware pass EQ, which I have right here, because for this masterclass, I wanted to add some analog mojo. So the pass EQ is adding 120 Hz, 2308K.6. So there's like 1 dB, 1 dB, 1 dB. Don't think about that too much. Then I have another precision EQ that's just doing half dB here and there, 9K, 100. Then there's two more units here, which is basically a tube and a tape emulation. These are very old. The graphical user interface is as ugly as it can be. They're vintage now. These were used in the actual tracks. I remember we sometimes tracked through them, if I'm not wrong. And these two are meant to give me like a sort of a tape machine, tube tape machine emulation. Think of it as a Ampex 351. That's a very long, strong statement to say, to have these two things just magically trigger the 351 sound. But let's say for the sake of it, it's there. I don't have to use tape. Then there's precision maximizer, just giving things more oomph, and then a limiter set to just 0, so things don't go to red, and as somebody else said, makes me look pro, right? Now you might say, oh God, with this mix bus, there's so much stuff to know that how can I now understand what Alberto is doing with dynamic EQ? I would please urge you to ignore that we are passing through the mix bus. The fact that most of you people, or maybe not, but most of the people out there, let's say you're not like that, right? But we know people, right? We know some people that need total cleanliness, I don't know if that's even a word, for listening or shooting out stuff or so. So I can't really go with a clean mix bus when I'm going entirely in the box. The reason is I'm used to analog outboard in a hybrid mix situation. So whenever I push something in the box, going out to the outboard, those things get sort of like compensated or attenuated. If I have an analog compressor, like a tube compressor on it, 3 dBs on an EQ no longer translate as a super straight through wire in digital with those 3 dBs. So first off, don't worry, it's nothing that is really overdoing the mix. And second of all, it's like the sound of a desk. Think of it as if we were working in a digital environment that has a sound, like a desk, like an analog desk. You know, I don't have analog desks here. I don't want them laying around. But the fact that things are a little bit non-linear, which is a strong statement to say, makes me happy. And this is much better. So, last but not least, to throw you a boomerang or a carve ball, I have one single simple channel strip plug on the master bus. What does this mean? This means that before actually printing, and therefore before you hearing the thing, there's this Neve channel strip from UAD. What is this doing? Nothing. There's no dynamics, there's no EQ, there's only we're passing through unity gain. The thing is, if you try and listen to that at your own expense, at home, you know, when nobody sees you on a Friday night, you will hear that this thing is a little bit non-linear. So it just gives everything a little bit more mojo. And to me, it became, I just saw it here and there on some tutorials and stuff, and I was like, this is cool. I want to do it when I'm mixing in the box. So when I have the chance, I just put it there. Again, we forget about it. We will check it when we go to the mix bus to do the dynamic EQ, but then that's it. So you might, ask, how does this darn thing sound? So let's hear verse into the chorus.
Volo oltre un margine per cercare dove sei. Nel vuoto non sento più l'inquietudine. Musicando favore mi abbandono a te. Non cadrà
and then we go into the special. So let me save, because we never know what can happen. And let's dive in. If you have questions on the actual session, now could be the time to ask them, and we can then go through that. If I don't see it in the chat, you're probably asleep, or you left, or you don't have questions. Clearly the last one, right? Has to be. So what I want to talk about is dynamic EQs. But to talk about dynamic EQs, we need to have a dynamic EQ in front of us. So what I wanted to use is a plugin called Quartet, which means 4 things. Making something together in harmony, right? Let's fantasize on that, which actually could be the... So why is it called Quartet? Quartet is a plugin made by the amazing mastermind of Mr. Dwayne Wise. I hope I'm not butchering the his name or last name, because I hate to do that. I trained Dwayne. I'm sorry. I stayed up all night last time, because the most simple names you might think of, they're the ones you're gonna screw up. So if I do, sorry. And do I know with my name and last name, right? So this Quartet comes from this company called Wholegrain DS, and you can, digital systems, you can go look them. Now I think there's also this Amber Waves, which is now a division of Wholegrain software, and it is renowned to be, this is nothing to do with me, I'm not famous, but this plugin, boy, is it. It is. It's being used in lots of productions where you need versatility and no sound, and something that you can strap on all of the tracks you have. Think about, I don't know if you've watched a movie like The Pirates of the Caribbean, right? That movie, the guy I don't know, but I love his stuff, is pretty much Quartet everywhere. And it's being then sent to a second system, because it's 3 orchestras, I think. There's videos around that you can go see on their website. And it's getting captured by another rig that has Quartet, again, on the buses. So this is the level of dedication and trust that these guys are giving to this plugin. I picked this because it's the best. Honestly, when you have to do dynamic equalization, especially on finished mixes for mastering, this is the thing. So the interface, you might look at it and go like, this ain't fancy. I'm not gonna use it. But trust me, you have to go past the simple interface that you see for 2 reasons. First, who cares about the interface? Nobody's gonna look at the interface when you finish a record. And 2, it's actually pretty good. Like, you have everything laid down in a way that if you get to know this plug, which you have to do for every plugin you have, because the moment you put it on, you don't really have a physical memory to it, just like on a real desk. This guy can do compression and expansion and has a lot of tricks that he can do. Now, I think now it's a month or 2, Dwayne might, remember, that I have been beta testing these for Wholegrain. And I wrote Dwayne like, this is amazing, but it would be great if we had these. So I can't feel anything but personally attached now to this thing, because it has features I actually requested. So this is the level of dedication that also the programmer is giving you, or me in this case, but like a guy who's working with that. And he just doesn't send you an automated email like, oh, maybe I will add it. Thank you very much. By the way, don't reply to this email because there's nobody here. The guy is like, okay, I'll try and see if I can put it in the next beta. Let's try and see. And he sends me a file and he goes like, here, try it now. So this is great. When you work with plugs and you have that one thing that you like to use, but it would lack that little single thing, this is the thing that you want from the developers. So, plugin, how does it work? You have a top tab with parametric fine controls. Very simple. I promise you, by the time I finished explaining, you'll be like master of Quartet. Maybe not, but you'll be way ahead of everybody else. There's 4 bands: red, yellow, green, blue. Low, low mid, highs. Super easy. You have frequency, you have slope or Q, and you have gain. You can pick whether you want to turn it off, if you want a bell, low shelf or high shelf. Hint, you can put low shelves or peaks everywhere. You don't need to have picks specific in the middle frequencies and shelves outside. You can have a high shelf on the red. All right? Amazing. Compression fine controls. Every band has a compressor. What does this mean? Then now we go into what a dynamic EQ is. If you set the compressors all to out, like this, you are basically disabling the compressor and you have an EQ. And I might say a darn fine EQ. So you can use this just to EQ stuff. Sounds great. You can tweak the display from minus 24 to plus minus 3, so it can get really fine. I love that you have 20 and 20K in the graph, a little bit in the inner side, so you can see what's going on below 20 or over 20K. Because I have a cat, some of you have dogs, we want to know what they hear, at least want to see it, right? And whales, we care about the whales, so we have to have under 20 hertz. So this is, about the graph itself. So if you disable the compressor, you will have this amazing EQ that you can use. You can tweak stuff, you can move it around here, you can set the Q, you can basically use it as an equalizer. But dynamic EQs are made so in a way that a band has specific crossovers, so it's being listened to by one compressor. And the way the compressor works and the crossover points are something very technical, which this Alberto right here ignores. Because if I were to say technical stuff like that, I would probably screw everything up. Ask the programmers, they can chime in on that. But you can select a specific frequency and use a compressor on that band. So the EQ works as you would expect, but then you set the threshold on the content of that bell or shelf. And if the threshold gets surpassed, the compressor kicks in just for that band. So why is this cool? Suppose you have a frequency that comes from a resonance, like in a room, and you'll see it when I go mixing straight through. Like the booth I told you about. That booth has resonances around 620. I remember the specific frequencies because I hated those. And I was like, oh, my booth sounds like crap. But, that's the way it was. So we couldn't build anything bigger. So if you know that, and you can hear, for example, that a singer turns that frequency up a lot, makes the resonance come alive on specific notes, you wouldn't want to EQ that thing on the get-go, from the get-go. Because if he's singing very high, maybe, or she, in this case he, if he's singing very high, that frequency maybe is not gonna be light up. But if it's going lower in frequencies, then the resonance comes up. So that's why dynamic EQs are super cool, and this is something digital knows how to do very well. You can have a compressor stay there, emphasize a specific frequency for when it's lacking, and then you have the dynamic EQ work when it's getting too much of that frequency. Think about a de-esser, same thing. On a vocal, you want to have it bright, right? You want to have air, you want to have 10K, 20K, but you want to start from around 5 or also boost 5. Around 6, you might have S's. So what happens is if you tweak it there, whenever an S comes up, you will have like, oh, too much. So what do you do now? Well, when you put a de-esser, that's exactly what you have. You're having something that is creating a dynamic compression only when it's necessary, only when a specific threshold is getting triggered. This is what we will do. We will set compression ratios, gain, and threshold, and make the thing work. And you have visual feedback on the graphical interface, of course. This thing also has an expander, which I have to say I seldom use, but it's here. So you have threshold, you have gain, and you have ratio. So it's a expansion, dynamic expansion. You can have it so that when the threshold gets surpassed on the way down, things get pushed way farther down, right? By default, I usually in my default keep it down. Then you keep it hidden, sorry. Then you have a graph, which you can set, as I said, in loudness. You can tweak the color, so it's easier to see. And you have the 4 bands that you can turn on, off. You can put this thing in threshold mode or rotation point mode. I will talk about that later. You have attack and release for every band, like a straight ahead compressor. You can save each band. You can read the manual. This is, a little bit more specific, but there's a tool chest down here. So every band can be saved. and then can be put in your tool chest and recalled. The tool chest allows you also to save like presets of bands that you can put in, just drag and drop like this, and you have it. I don't remember, yeah, right there. So these are 4 bands, and these are now loaded, and they have my what I call mastering kickoff, right? So it's a start point for my mastering. So in the tool chest you also have snapshots, you have everything that allows you to recall. And you might say, well, all right, you might make this face. All right, it's cool. But why would I use that? If you master a mix and you have 10 snapshots, trust me, it's gonna be amazing to be able to discern whether 0.3 or 0.5 was better with a tighter cue or a wider cue. The slightest differences make the most changes in the master phase. So that's amazing to have. On the real bottom of the interface, you have an input gain, and then you have a DC cut. This is a high-pass filter for cutting DC that goes now up to 300 Hertz. So it's actually a high-pass filter for cutting DC. And the DC cut has a specific slope, sounds really good. And also you have gain, so you can tweak the gain in and out. You can just disable everything in the dynamic EQ. You can bypass the whole thing with shift click when this thing turns red. You can A/B different settings. You have a level meter, and also you have an analog peak meter with release emitter, and it lights up when it's on in red. You can tweak it, and you also have the number of overs total, the number of recent consecutive overs, and the number of overruns sample length, like how long they were. This is the latest edition, and also the latest we have is actually there's a global threshold movement, but I told Dwayne, why don't we put something that makes the gain go up and the output gain go down simultaneously. So you have increments of +1 or increments of 0 + 1. Or 0.1, sorry. So you have a dB or a tenth of a dB that you can tweak around. Why would you do that? Well, I was interested in finding the sweet spot at which the compressor is moving without having a gain change. So this is amazing to have. Thank you, Dwayne, for having added it. And also then at the very last, you have a limit stage, which you can set with how many dBs full scale is the level at which it's going to limit. All of this in one plug, as fast as I could, the clearest I could, at 5:40 in the evening after a week of shooting. But this is really everything you might need. So how are we gonna just talk about that? No, now we're gonna destroy this plug here, and we're gonna go track by track. I am going to shut up. If you have questions, write them now. Otherwise, you can write them later, it doesn't matter. We'll take the verse of this thing. We'll go mute bass, guitars, keys, vocals, and effects. And then we'll go track by track, and I show you how just by using Quartet, you can tune the tracks. And you really will question, do I really need vintage clones? Because this thing, it sounds really good. The way it can shape things rather than, adding a specific sound to the session itself. It's just very transparent, but it gets the job done, and you will question whether or not you need analog mojo emulations in your mixes. So we'll use it on everything, and the game is, we can't use anything else. It must be Quartet. It can't be effect, can't be compressor, anything else. We have to use this guy. So while I was waiting for you to connect, I already played with this, and some settings I don't want to tweak because they sound great. So I want to show you the before and after of just the kick. I only did kick, snare, and one guitar, I think. So kick, look at the graphs and look at how things move. I'll start from bypass. So what you hear in this guy is that this frequency here, the yellow one, is where we hear the resonance, right? So I brought up some of these black, some of these yellow, green, and other things, but I also wanted to have something that could control the resonance of the booth. Hear that, it's this yellow band. It's these floppy little things. So rather than going there and saying, okay, I want to dynamically allocate that, that's usually very bad. So I will just cut it. And you might say, oh, it sounds super bright. Well, we need super bright to handle what this mix will become. So let's see with a little bit of slow. I'm also triggering the limiter, if you can see, and I am smashing it. But I don't mind, because it needs to be pumping a little bit. Let's hear it with and without compressor, with limiter. Alright, that was a little bit too much for now how I've set it up, but minus 7.6 works. Let's go to the snare. I am not gonna mute anything else. We keep the kick, we go to the snare. Snare, I've done it like this. So it's just generic, more highs, more mids, little bit more body, and a lot more lows, right? And the attacks and release are all set to my standard fuse room start, so it's a very gentle 1.40 to 1. Let's go to the other one I have done, which is the room, and then we go to the thing. The next thing I've added was the splash and TD, so you'll hear how the snare sounds with them when I solo them. That's more of a snare, right? And then I did the room, I think, yes. So room by itself. Not much of a difference, right? I tweaked this with kick and snare, and I really like how it sounds. So I'll start without the room and then I bring it in. Nice. So I brought up 54, 280, 5K, and 13K. But they're getting controlled because when the drummer hits them harder or whatever, the level is just being kept there. You see how the bands will move. So I think this is as much as I went. Oh, I did a floor tone. All right, floor tone. The other one needs to be done in real time. So floor. This is how it sounds without anything. I did this in context, but I want to hear it just by itself, and then we'll hear it in context. So, and now with. You see, I'm only using this, the red band, to compress. I'm not using these other guys, which I could in theory even go off with the band itself. I don't need to do it. Maybe if the threshold gets surpassed by a super hit, they will be there to keep things under check. But for now, if it doesn't move, that's exactly the effect of using an EQ. And I told you, it sounds great. So it's not because I have a dynamic EQ that I have to use the dynamic section all the time. No. But for the bass, yes. Because how would it sound if I bring the compressor off? So I go out with the compressor. Actually, I go out here. So now it's no longer compressing the red. And let's hear the bass goes a little bit out of control, and I don't want that. I can hear it here in the room that it's shaking somewhere. I want body, but I don't want that much. So let's hear it with snares, snare splash, kick. Right? Sounds great. I love when you can feel the tom and hear it, but it's not like, hello, I'm a tom. It doesn't work. It does not have to be distracting, right? But in the mix of the drums. This was without Quartet. Yeah, it's not too bad, but with. That smack, right? And the level of bass that just adds up to the kick. I love it. Okay, this is pretty much done. So I will try and see the overheads, which I'm not sure we want to bring in or not. Let's see. So I'll take a verse section, which is this. There you go, 650, dreaded frequency. So we know it's 650. Let's just keep it at 0 and let's turn the compressor down to tame it. It's a 1.4, 10 dBs, 10 milliseconds and 100 release. This is my starting point, right, for everything. Listen to the snare. Without, it's more there. I can hear it through the monitors, it's there. Maybe if I go a little bit down in frequency, and at this point I can go save A and save B. So now I can use B to go a little bit lower in frequency, not 650, but around 400 hertz, you know, where the snare has a note. And now I can tweak. I can alternate between A and B. B, definitely B. So what do we want to do with the overheads? Let's try and see. Sometimes I like to boost the low. So I can use the filter, go to around like 75. And I can make it fast to 0.1. Let's try and see this idea. How about we make the low frequency band work on the overheads? As soon as the kick hits, we compress the bass in the overheads. So the real kick drum, the direct mic, goes through without this thing being out of phase or creating problems. But then after 40 milliseconds, we come back to release the compressor and we get the ambience, the low ambience from the booth. Maybe it will sound really bad because again, the booth didn't have very good sound. And it does sound great. It works as this is Grammy winning, like right there, sign me the check. This is extending the kick drum sound through the overheads. And you can take a note about this because I regret having cut lows from all of the overheads in my life. If you do it right, you have great lows for the kick to make the kick even longer, especially if you have like tiny little short kicks. So now let's go with the highs. Honestly, I wouldn't touch this that much, and I'm telling you why, because we have the hat. I don't like to mic it, but we do have it. So here's what I'm gonna do. There you go. Enough. Don't wanna do anything else. And you might say, oh, Alberto, but you did this How does it compute? I can't understand. Just listen to it. We just have a little bit more hat. That's it. More het or hot, or depending on the currency of your country. Now, Quartet on rack tom. This is gonna be, it's usually annoying. I know we have to take one hit and find out. Let's start by audaciously copying what we have on the floor tom, which yes, never works, but let's put these guys on 0. I would say that's enough. Just lower it. I just want to keep the high mids to not make things too peaky. So minus 38 is like right there. If he goes higher than that anywhere in the song, the green band will go like blook and duck him, right? So let's hear it in another feel, maybe here. Oh, he goes probably higher. Yes, it's a little bit loud. So we go probably +3. Still loud. Right. Now I did things LCR. So one rack tom is fully right, one floor tom is fully left. If you hate me for doing that, you are not good for old rock. Please love me. This is LCR is amazing when done right. And it saves you from going into the pan pots. Just go left, right, or center. And you can make amazing mixes with that. You don't always need things to be 34.3, you know. Bass. Do we have everything? Yes. So the drums are done. We have done the drums. So now we go to bass. We're gonna keep the drums there. No more soloing. I'm sorry if you want to solo stuff. It's not how I work. It's gonna sound like crap if I do so. So get rid of the fuzz. So, do we want extreme lows from the bass? I say no. I want some finger. I want some mid-high. This yellow area is great, but it could get bad if it goes too much on the mids, right? So we... So I like this, and you see where I like it, it's unity gain. So what I can do is I can put this in rotation mode. So now I have an additional point that is gonna act like true rotation. So if I go -3 here, I'm no longer working only 0 plus. I'm working with a pivot point around the threshold difference. It's tricky to say, but with the behavior that you see, I can now just adjust the ratio and make things float there. Super comfortable once you get a hang of it, but it's like an additional pivot point. That's why it's called rotation. I think that's great. Some of the notes were sticking out a little bit. Now let's see the bass. So why don't we give it a little bit like more attack and a shorter release. Shorter release. Hold on. All right, I like it. I've put 95 hertz here. Highs I don't want. I would call it a day. That's okay. Now, fuzz. The fuzz has to stay constant throughout the whole thing, right? So let's find where this fuzz works. I can go with alt click on a band on a monitor mode. And this is so I can listen to only this green band. And this tells me 2K is the ticket. It's where things are audible, right? Could only be 2K, the fuzz would be there. So we bump it. And it's staying there without being too much, because too much of this is really, really too much. Now we go to guitars. Let me mute all of these guitars. These I like. I don't think there's much to be done. I need another bell, so I'll go to pick. And I might need another peak, so I have the red because the 500, dreaded 500, I want to carve a little. Now I like it. Okay. This is great because this song has just one. We decided to go with one verse guitar. So one verse guitar means it has to hold ground. There's only synthesizer, but this is the main thing. So it has to be beefy, it has to be present, it has to be there. So we need the frequencies to always give content, give meat to the thing without going overboard. If he moves up in the neck, we still have the low band that frees up some dynamics and gives us energy, right? So these I like. And still, I mean, again, no effects, nothing like that. Now there's this guitar, which is like a tiny little pad. All right, this is where the booth rears its ugly head, so. But the idea was also to have an uglier guitar. So, okay, these I like. Let's go to P. This has to be something in the center that then just doesn't, you know, it explodes again to the chorus guitars. So let's keep it as is and let's go to chorus guitars. And let's turn one, put it in the center. Okay, here we need more gain. So let's go immediately 4.5. Now we move this guy all to the left. we copy, we close, we paste these, we do a different setting for this other one. Let's try and play cool. Let's try and do one and then shift the frequencies a little bit and then move it around. Now this should allow me to go like this, and let's hear both. Okay, maybe I could go a high shelf on this one. I might have the attack a little bit too slow, and I don't want it on the high frequencies because these 57s are 57. Let's leave them as they are and see the synthesizers. These, they also sound great the way they are. So, who knows? Let's see. Okay, these maybe we can copy here. That's enough. We don't need maybe lots less lows, like around 1.5. So don't want to underload things. It's more guitars. Who's this guy? I say this works for him. Let's keep it like this. Let's be adventurous. Who's this guy? Right? So copy paste. Alright, there's a single note maybe. Now here a low pass would be great, but we can't use it. Oh yes, the meat. This is a little bit high. I'm looking at the meters. I don't want things to... Nice, don't want things. And then the solo. Let's go back with all of our context. See, that's the case. I like it without anything. So chorus guitars will be just chorus guitars as they are. Maybe a little bit of level difference. I don't care. For example, solo, right? You have a solo now. You want to focus where things are interesting for the part. Even sometimes not the case here when you don't have room for the volume to just go up. You can pinpoint an area. definitely the 1K was close. So now we raise it, and then we make sure that things are kept in check. If if the guitarist goes too much, then the dynamic EQ will push down, maybe with like a tighter. You heard how he's sitting there. Then you can automate, you can do many things, but he's just being kept there at that level, which we like. So now synths very fast. I'm actually gonna do, well, I did vocals last time first. I need to change things. I'm not used to just repeating myself. So let's turn the keys on, and let's turn them all off, and so I can do one by one. It's this thing, it's this synth here. Doesn't need more than that, I would say. We're so low, the limiter doesn't even hit it. I could go more. This is okay as it is. Second synth. Well, there's a little bit of a resonance. It's also around 800. Right? You can really pinpoint these, and now we can use this additional peak to do an average. You see, so I fixed the problem with light and green, and then I used blue without dynamics to just go up there. Notice also my 1.4 works pretty much all the time. It's not too much, it's just very gentle and can be brought in. You can copy this preset. Thou art allowed to do it. This is another amazing thing. This sweeps, so the dynamic EQ just sits there, doesn't want the 500 Hz to be too much. When the sound passes through, the dynamics go down, and then they get easier, relaxed, because the sound is going overboard. So that's it. One thing that might bother the singer around, I would already say 400 something, 4K, sorry, something, will be this. So you see how it works, right? The synth is sweeping. This is Alberto sweeping the synth with the filter. The moment the sound passes the frequency of around 2K, the green band starts going down. Why is that? Because now there's frequency content that surpasses the minus 49 dB FS threshold. So it only works when there's too much there. And the reason I did this is that I'm predicting that the vocal line might get masked by this sound. This is how cool I am, like thinking ahead. But it's common. These kind of sounds, if you've mixed any songs, there's no trick. They will mask the singer, and then people will be like, I can't really listen to the lyrics. You do that, and now I'll play it. Look how the two bands counteract each other. I mean, and by that I mean one starts working, then gets released, and then the green one keeps going down. This is how cool this dynamic EQ is. And trust me, to get this sound to stay on the back, here in the control room, I can really hear it there, but it's a full perfect background. And that's exactly where my synths need to be for this song. Except for this line, which is the feature, but has to come out of the ashes. So maybe let's do the bottom one first. So this, we don't need the lows. What was I touching? This other track? Maybe? No? Yes? Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I was just falling asleep. Nah, this works. So, let's get back at the here. I want this stereo track to be... Oh, hi, Jay. I want this to be open, but constantly feeding the back of the mix. I want this to be a pad as it was designed to be. So let's find out where this works. It's the 700, right? So we can safely go here, maybe a bit open Q. Right, longer release. It's subtle, but it's there. When I start going ooh, ee, then it's not jumping anymore because the mid frequencies content is kept there. Awesome. So now signature line. And this is the line by itself. The presence is around 1.4. Now we'll emphasize that frequency and we'll make sure we don't raise the volume of this track for making it heard. We focus on the frequencies that it's triggering in presence, so we can leave the volume as it is and just bring up the signature frequencies, the main, harmonics. And then we give it just 1 dB because this is my line, this is me playing in 2007 as a young kid, and I want it to be a 1 dB louder. I know the guitar player will immediately notice, so, it will be fun while it lasts. Let's cut this guy. There's a bit of a higher guitar here. All right, just a tiny little bit less volume. Let's go like -3. And then I go -14 here. The reason is... Oh, thanks, Jay. Yeah, it's me. Jay's a fan and says good things about me, so I let him say them. But thanks, thank you very much. Enjoy the masterclass, brother. This is as live as it gets from Berlin. So now I think everything is done. Oh no, we're missing these lines. All right. So let's see these. there's a guitar. Okay, this I really like. You can hear it has to support the whole song. So when I mix it without this, I'm suffering now because it sounds much better than, you know, what I mixed before. This dynamic EQ is making the synths stay exactly at the level and on the sound stage where I need them to be. These two sounds I wrote them for a reason. There's no guitars. The sound and the vocals have to be floating in the synths and they have to be far left and right. Let's hear it with the vocal. Well, let's turn the vocals on to start. This is just two synths and vocals.
In volo ormai non scenderò, voglio oltrepassare quel confine che non c'è.
It has to float, and it works if it's just kept like that. And this is why now I think we have all the guitars, all the synths. We go to the vocals. Normally I wouldn't do the vocal this far, but you know, had to change something. So effects on. I don't care for the effects to be turned down. They have to be here. So let's see where this brings us, because vocals are hard to do anywhere. So dynamic EQ, what can you do for us?
Volo oltre un margine per cercare dove sei. Nel vuoto non sento più l'inquietudine, musicando favore mi abbandono a te. Volo oltre un margine per cercare dove sei.
All right, I found the S's, which means the letters S. Don't make jokes about that. We're live, guys.
Volo oltre un margine.
But suppose I didn't find the S's and I needed to scout for them. Boom, monitor mode, solo mode on one band. Boom, dove sei? It means to, he's saying per cercare dove sei, to look for you, to find out where you are. And that sei has an S. And you can hear it peeking through the mix. It's around 7.8, 7.7, 8K, around there. Maybe it's the microphone, maybe. So let's tweak this. Sharp Q, everything stays there, and we just attenuate these guys.
Dove sei?
So it has to be a fast attack. Let's try and make it as fast as we can and release 10 milliseconds, like invisible. And then I go down on the threshold and find out where this starts working.
Dove sei?
Minus 30.
Dove sei?
Without this band,
Dove sei?
who doesn't love this plugin? Come on. No excuses. It's done. And I say so, so it's done. We miss one band, but let's try and find out if it works.
Dove sei? Dove?
All right, we can use it for the telephone frequency. So let's go 2500, not even looking at that. Q 1.5.
Dove sei? Dove sei?
All right, maybe a longer sample will help us maintain mental sanity.
Volo oltre un margine.
What? Let's focus on the yellow one. Jay is asking, I wasn't there when you started, but real quick, are you using dynamic EQ on all individual tracks in replace of a static EQ in this scenario? Yes, Jay. The drill after I explain this plugin, this video will be available afterwards, so you'll be able to watch it from the start. Don't worry. The game, I built this little game. I have to use only Quartet. I can't use anything but this dynamic EQ. Can't use effects, can't use channel strips, no other compressors. Has to sound right with just this. So I'm applying dynamic equalization when needed, how I need it, the way I like it, into every track to demonstrate how dynamic EQ can be used, or sometimes just one band works, or nothing, you know, just it happened with chorus guitars. I bypassed the plug and I was like, this sounds better than before. So that's it. And this is it. So the telephone frequency is around 2,400. And in this case, sometimes it shifts from 2K to 2.5. So I like this. Let's try and keep it maybe around 2 milliseconds. I don't know if I want to compress it.
Volo oltre un margine per cercare dove sei.
It gives presence to the vocals, but maybe 4 dB is a tad too much. Let's go 1.4.
Volo oltre un margine per cercare dove sei. Nel vuoto non sento più l'inquietudine, musicando favore.
This was a pop-ish song, so it will tend to be a little bit loud, the vocals, because we aimed at a sort of, you know, Italy has this rock market that is not really rock. It's not, I don't know, Queens of the Stone Age rock or Foo Fighters rock. It's pop rock oriented. So we had, you know, at least we know we have them up front. Now let's try and see, since I can't use any compressor, if we save A, I save B as well, and I start limiting the track with a release of, I like 41. It's become like a number in my head. So I'll raise the output gain, and you remember it's hitting the limit gain. So it's +3 into the -6, right? I want to see if the limiter is able to just keep the vocals there, because sometimes now they're a little bit too loud, sometimes they're okay. Let's see when things start working.
Volo oltre un margine per cercare dove sei. Nel vuoto non sento più l'inquietudine.
Babada booby, it works. So we ended up, sorry, I get carried away and just forget to say the numbers. +4, -8.9. At this point, we have enough gain into the limiter. The limiter is there, and you can hear how hard it is to hear the limiter. Made a joke, pun, because it's very transparent and it works also on mixes as well. So it's done. Let's hear the bridge into, I don't use markers, I'm guilty as charged. I should. My Pro Tools teacher said I should use markers. All right, so we go from the end of the chorus into special and then end of the chorus. This is where things get as big as they can, drop down, then go back up. And I'm gonna leave everything as is, but I'm gonna double check that I'm not overloading this bus. Then we do a little bit of minor adjustments and then it's done. So I have the input gain. This fader here will decide how hard I'm getting into the mix bus, which is the same exact mix bus that I told you about. I haven't touched anything. And I want to see this needle moving a little bit, see some action, and then determine whether I like it more glued or less.
Afferro ciò che voglio nella sua totalità.
Alright, I have to go too hard into that, so let's try and tweak this guy just a tiny little bit, because I like how it sounds when it's getting solicited by more gain. So I'll move the threshold.
Afferro ciò che voglio nella sua totalità. In volo ormai non scenderò. Voglio oltrepassare quel confine.
right, I like how that's set up, and now I want the vocoder to give the support that I know the track has already in the context, and I will design the vocoder frequencies around the singer. So let's go chorus, as much as these guys here, and it has to be transparent, but it has to be constantly there. So the limiter will also play a role. Alright, these I like. It's just, I spent so much time playing the harmonies while he was singing, and it's like, I don't care, now they have to be heard. But it creates that little bit of not only harmony, but just it clashed like a pitch harmonizer, right? Because I don't remember how the morph order was set. I'm pretty sure it was a morph order. So this we like. Now, you remember we go into Shadow Hills, FG Red, K Stereo, hardware pass EQ this time. I told you it's doing plus 120, 2K, 8K, 1 dB there as well. Precision EQ, same settings. DID valve into tape, precision maximizer, precision limiter. But there's an empty slot here, and we will put Quartet into the mix bus to handle how things go before the tape machine. Now, prepare to be amazed. I have a mastering kickoff setting. I've spent so much time tweaking this preset. I almost feel it should be included. Ooh, I'm pitching this to the developers. Now, it's 50, 355, 8K, 14K. And everything is set so that I can start just massaging the mix and hear how things sound, if I can improve them or not. So let's see where things get a little bit interesting. It's only 2 bands and I've gone wild, plus 2.6 on both, but there's a tape machine after, supposedly tape machine after. This is my own Frankenstein of Dr. Frankenstein of tape. It's an emulation of, let's say, the tube stage and then the tape stage. So things are getting compensated. They're not linear the way it would be just plus 2.6. And this is not mastering whatsoever. It's just giving a little more smile. Then let's try and see the 8K and 355. I don't know. There could be some mass that I like to. I love the yellow band. It's just giving my synths more power. More power to the synths. The green, though, needs to be tamed. I'm having fun. I think you guys can tell. It's like I can do these all day. Alright, I don't know. Maybe this is too much. It creates a little bit, maybe it's too sharp. I would leave it as is. Yes, wider Q kind of works, because even if we're cutting there, you remember the S's for the vocals are around 7.5. So we are like not too close. And you might say, oh, Alberto, but why? I mean, you could have changed the frequencies. Of course I could, obviously. For the sake of this, I'm just using my preset for kickoff. I tested it against other plugs that I use all the time, and I tried to come up with something that would make sense, like, will this make me ditch other plugs? And this is like, you see, I just raised those frequencies, which are pretty common on mastering EQs as well, and things just work. So let's go without and with. I love it. It's the slight difference that makes your ears not understand really what's going on, but the soundstage just cleans up a little bit and makes, you know, the right details and stuff, and you get that sort of a hug, like a ear hug, something like that. So I don't want to use anything else. Let me check the levels of the loudest part. We might be a tad high, so if I want to cheat and make sure things kind of work that way, I would probably print a version that has, oh, let me save this as a selection, call it print, so that when I go, so I can make my Pro Tools teacher proud. Comma, 1, comma, have the selection and I can print. So we are at around, I think, minus 18, minus 12 or something like that. I can put a meter here. The problem is, you will see I don't have many good meters, so, or that I like. This might be, let me see, sound field meters is a meter, clearly. What's the RMS? Well, okay, not too bad for a verse. He says we're hitting minus 14 RMS in the chorus. This would make me the most amazing genius of all times of going chorus without not even knowing, and being the mythical minus 14 that your has to receive in order to make the perfect master. Honestly, I think I'm louder. I trust my meter there that says I'm louder, around 12-ish, 11, but around minus 10 I'm sort of okay. Because let's say I trim this guy too and we print, but could even not trim, we're not peaking, so, but in case I have the output print that we can go for, and that's gonna be completely clean. So I am about to end the masterclass. If you have any question, write it now, or you can email me later. I will just shut down my talkback and therefore automatically shut up, and let the song roll and print. And again, if you have any question or whatever, just, you know, write it now or write me an email. You know, our website is at fuseroom.com. We also have private master classes, blah blah blah. Some people like to focus on specific topics, and you can sign up for them and we can find your schedule and we can study together if you want. So that concludes the masterclass on dynamic equalization. I know I haven't been as academic as some people might like things to be. I honestly don't care. I like for you to see what my approach is and how weird or common or whatever, how unique, you know, I hope my approach is in some of the parts. And if you don't like things I've done, that's perfectly fine. My mission is accomplished. You heard things you don't like. You were able to discern if some things are good to your ears or bad. The mission was accomplished. As long as you got ideas and things about Quartet, in this case, that I highlighted as my favorite dynamic EQ plug, or whatever you want to use. Dynamic equalization is super huge in digital domain today, and again, lots of people use it, and it's a tool that you should know. All right, thank you very much for joining me. I will now leave the song to roll and print. All right, thank you very much, guys. Oh, what's the CPU usage on that plugin? Well, I can tell you that it is really low, to the point where I haven't measured it, but I never had issues with these. Let me see. I don't even know where the system usage is. Oh, there we go. So right now we are using 15% of half the cores of my system. So I'm only using 12 CPUs out of 24, and those CPUs are getting hit 15% with all of them. I think I used around 34 channels, summing stereo into mono. So it's really low, it doesn't impact things, and you can also use a calculation that goes too fast. So if you put the calculation to square of channel sum, this plugin will use even less resources. Will sound probably not as good, but it will allow you to put more. And I was saying that this is used in huge productions, in orchestral stuff like Pirates of Caribbean. They have used Quartet everywhere on 3 orchestras together. I think it's hundreds and hundreds of tracks, and they have just these, and they put it on every track and they mix it, and they're able to have the sound that you heard in the movies like that. So I would say CPU is entirely not a factor unless you have an 8086 with which you should probably play some DOS dungeon game, right? Which is could be awesome to do a masterclass on those. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Jay, for your nice words again. I hope you stay with us for next masterclasses, and again, share the links, do whatever you want with them. I mean, not really whatever you want, but share them with people that you think might be interested. And we see us in the next masterclasses. Ciao, guys.